Devil May Cry 4 launched in 2008, making it now over a decade since the last DMC title, and that's ignoring the 2013 reboot by Ninja Theory. Due to development issues with DMC4, the game launched in an unfinished state and was pretty unsuccessfully received by the fans, and that was a shame considering it was carrying on from the legacy led by DMC3 that's highly regarded as being one of the best adventure hack and slash games. Given the Capcom at the time were moving on to other projects, and the bad response from the fourth title in the series, DMC was pretty much presumed dead. That was until E3 of 2018, where live on the Xbox conference, Hideaki Itsuno, the original producer, announced a return to classic form in Devil May Cry 5, also adding that he was increasingly confident this was his team's best work yet. Well, did it live up to that? I'm here to answer that. Alright, rewind time. Pause for a moment. I'm going to go into a bit of lore to catch people up who've never played or been familiar with the DMC series. This should be enough to get you ready to play DMC 5. If you're already familiar or you can't be asked to listen, just skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. So you want to learn DMC. Well, Devil May Cry is a true adventure hack and slash, with a rambunctious plotline and an even bigger rambunctious set of characters. The first three games mostly focus around Dante, making him the main protagonist and ultimately the poster child of the series. However, DMC has an extensive and albeit messy lore, meaning Dante isn't really the primary focus all the time. That being said, if you can ignore some of the messy sides, it's actually an incredibly entertaining and compelling plot. And besides, who doesn't like riding vertically up a tower on a motorbike like the motherfucking horses from Skyrim, on your way to kill some demons at the top? Anyway, this plot's complicated, and it has more death, love, and betrayal than the average EastEnders Christmas special, so just buckle up. So, in the world of DMC, the human world and the underworld are connected. This allows demons to run rampant through the human world, causing chaos, despair, and destruction everywhere. The demon force is mostly led by an archdemon called Mundus, but another archdemon called Spada decides to turn on Mundus and turn to the side of justice. He destroys Mundus and frees the human world. Spada then decides to seal away the connecting gate to hell within a tower that he names Tema Negru. The key to this gateway is sealed within a red gemstone that links to Spada's sword, which creates a key. Spada then of course falls in love with a human woman called Eva, because every Outer World character needs to fall in love with a human. Eva birthed two sons, Dante and Virgil, who were both given half of that crucial gemstone. After years of peace, Spada ends up disappearing mysteriously. Mundus ends up rising again, sending demons to seek out Spada, only to find Eva and their two sons. Eva gets Dante to safety, urging him to save himself and run away. Dante grows up for years believing that both his mother and his brother Virgil died that day. Years down the line, Dante is hunting demons professionally, and he's harnessing some of the strength that's been passed down to him via his half-demon ancestry. During a mission, Dante is actually reunited with Virgil, where they eventually realize that both need the amulet hull, which means taking the other half, which neither want to lose. They fight, and they realize they're pretty much evenly matched, and they both just leave. It's actually really dumb. Virgil wishes to ascend to more power, whereas Dante is kind of just okay with just eating pizza and killing demons. The Tema Negru rises again, where we can see a man called Arkham standing alongside Virgil. He and Virgil plan to reopen the gateway to hell so that Virgil can kind of farm power, like some kind of XP. Now, the distinction has to be made here that Virgil at this point isn't necessarily evil, he's just kind of on a misguided pursuit of power. Arkham, however, is evil, as he has sacrificed his wife in a ritual so that he could ascend to become a demon. The ritual actually ends up backfiring, leaving him scarred and very weird. Dante ends up marching on the tower to take it down, and Dante ascends up, meeting two notable characters. The first being a nameless girl who is later named Lady, who reveals herself to be Arkham's daughter, seeking revenge on him for what he did to her mother. And yes, she is meant to resemble a schoolgirl. Thanks, Japan. She assumes that Dante is a demon and attempts to kill him, but their playful back and forth leads to them actually eventually uniting. The next character met along the way is referred to as Jester. He actually taunts Dante as he ascends, but does actually help Dante somewhat through the tower. Once at the peak of the tower, Dante and Virgil meet for a showdown. Dante gets his ass handed to him in a battle, like absolutely obliterated. Virgil ends up taking Dante's half of the amulet before stabbing Dante with his own sword named Rebellion. However, this strike awakens some form of demon power within Dante, giving him the strength to get up. Virgil and Arkham actually just end up leaving together, and Dante shortly leaves after. There's something to do with a giant demon whale that also eats Dante, but that doesn't matter. Virgil then actually questions Arkham's usefulness and loyalty after realizing that the woman in the tower is in fact Arkham's daughter. And Virgil ends up stabbing Arkham, leaving him betrayed and bleeding out outside of the sanctum within the Temendagru. Lady then proceeds to find her father Arkham bleeding out. While her mission initially was to actually come here and kill him, he claims that he was possessed all along and that Virgil is the real enemy. Lady and Dante enter the sanctum to find that it won't open, and Virgil claims that it will open with Dante's blood. Dante and Virgil fight, more evenly matched this time due to Dante's awoken demon powers, but they're both too evenly matched and nobody wins. Then Jester reappears again, who then decides to reveal himself to actually be Arkham in disguise. He had been betraying and manipulating Dante, Virgil, and Lady the whole time, using them to get into the sanctum. He reveals the actual final piece of the puzzle is the blood of the innocent, aka Lady, his daughter. He stabs her, letting the blood run through the room, opening the gate to hell. Arkham, now using the power of Sparta, is unable to control it within his human body, so ultimately he falls as the brothers overwhelm him. Dante and Virgil end up fighting over who has the right to control the full power of Sparta, and ultimately Dante wins. The gateway starts to seal again, but Virgil for some reason decides to stay. Virgil, kept in the underworld, decides to fight Mundus, proclaiming that if his father could do it, so could he. Dante opens up a shop for his services and names it Devil May Cry. Years later, a woman called Trish enters the shop and proceeds to beat the crap out of Dante, and then she ends up revealing that she was just testing his ability. Long story short, Trish ends up explaining that Mundus has actually re-risen and is going to destroy the world once again, for like the third time now. They go together to take him down, and while on this mission, Dante encounters Virgil, whose mind has been corrupted and twisted from his time in hell. They fight, and Dante defeats him, which allows him to take his half of the gemstone, which allows him to awaken the full power of the Blade of Sparta. Trish then betrays Dante, revealing that she's actually a demon working for Mundus. It's like the 6th or 7th betrayal now. Dante defeats her, but decides not to kill her as she resembles his mother. Mundus then tries to sacrifice Trish because she failed him, but then gets interrupted by Dante, and Mundus fires these weird laser eye things at Dante, but Trish actually jumps in the way, blocking the shot instead. Dante, enraged by Mundus killing Trish, proceeds to kick his ass. Dante then proceeds to just beat Mundus and send him back to the underworld. Trish, wounded but somehow still alive, cries and weeps to Dante, apologizing for betraying him, but claims that she couldn't help it as it's her nature as a demon. Dante then argues that actually she's ascended past being a demon to being human through his sacrifice. He says that demons do not cry. Dante teams up with Trish then and stupidly decides to name the shop Devils Never Cry. Now fast forward a couple of years, and Virgil at some point during his time in the underworld leaves and goes to a place called Fortuna, which is a town in the overworld, and he sleeps with a human woman. She gets pregnant and she gives birth to a child called Nero, who is born with white hair, which is obviously the staple characteristic of the two brothers. So it's clear that Nero is Virgil's son. Nero grows up for years without knowing his father, nor his origin of demon blood. Nero works for an order called the Order of the Sword, which is a religious order that worships Sparta as some kind of feudal god. During an order meeting, Dante actually comes in and kills many of the disciples of the order, which leads to Nero to fight back in defense. Dante actually doesn't show any signs of wanting to kill Nero, and actually reveals to Nero that many of the people and disciples that Dante was fighting are actually demons in disguise as order members. The order has pretty much been taken from within now and is corrupted by demons. Long story short, and 4 as I mentioned earlier was a bit messy, so to cut it short, Nero, not really knowing what to do with himself, being betrayed by his order, ends up actually kind of teaming with Trish, Lady, and Dante, kind of following him as a pseudo-father figure. So there we have it. That's all you need to know for DMC5. We have Dante, Nero, Trish, and Lady together, and Virgil lost out there in the plains of hell, most probably corrupt and evil. Okay, that was too long, but back over to the actual review. So in short, Devil May Cry 5 is just an absolute masterpiece. There, review done. Enjoy the game. Okay, but seriously, I was not expecting to enjoy this game as much as I did. In fact, I finished the game on the hardest difficulty that I could on the day it came out, and I proceeded to finish it again the next day on the newly unlocked hardest difficulty. The game is absolutely brilliant, and it's this for many reasons, so let's break them down. To begin with, this game's main gimmick, if you even want to call it that, is that it actually allows you and sometimes pushes you to swap between the main 3 characters, and respectively 3 different playstyles with each. These characters are obviously Nero and Dante, but with the new addition of V. I was initially skeptical about this design choice because in a hack and slash, you want to really learn the moveset and master it, and not really be offloaded to a new one every other mission. Well, I gotta tell you, I was absolutely wrong. The system not only adds to the story, letting you experience events as different characters, but also keeps the game insanely fresh and consistently challenging. It also gives you the chance to really find a playstyle on at least one of the characters that really clicks with you. Now Capcom have gone out of their way with these characters to make them feel completely different to each other. Nero is a fast-paced, consistent sword fighter using his charge blade and handgun together for maximum damage, which is simple enough for pretty much anyone to get behind. However, Nero's main difference is the availability of his arm augments, which can be chosen and customized and equipped before and during each mission. Each Devil Breaker, is how they refer to them in the game, provides different abilities and a super ability once charged. These abilities range from slowing down time, firing lasers, electricity, and my personal favourite, a flying fist that hits the enemies and can also double down as a hoverboard. Dante's up next, and Dante actually stays true to his playstyle within the 3rd game in the series, allowing the player to swap between 4 different fighting styles. This is not only a great callback to 3, but a fluid and fun combat system. And it means that Dante isn't just tied to using his sword and gun. While he's still equipped with his iconic sword and guns, this time he actually also gets to use a Royal Guard stance, giving him a brawler playstyle, which fans of the series may be familiar with. Oh yeah, and later on he actually gets to use a motorcycle as a weapon, and to be honest, Dante's kit is just one big callback to most of his previous gags, and it absolutely works. V is the main outlier here, as he's decided to take some time off being a SoundCloud rapper to fight the forces of hell. And V focuses on range within gameplay, which is weird for a hack and slash game, I know, but V actually has to be played more strategically and slowly compared to the rest of the cast. He has 2 summons, a ranged bird and a melee focused panther. Both have a different and unique moveset, which is actually controlled remotely by V, while he stays in the backline trying not to get hit himself. But it's not just that simple. Neither summon can actually execute an enemy or kill them. For that, V has to use a finishing blow, meaning that while V has to stay back in the backline, he has to be calculated enough to dip in and out for executions. Oh yeah, and he's also got this giant fucking dude. He's pretty cool too, I guess. But you can only use him once you've racked up enough edgy points. Anyway, each playstyle is awesome and different enough that the game never seems to become stale, because before it gets a chance to, you're swapping movesets from different scenarios. Although that said, while some missions give you the choice of characters to choose from, there are some missions that require a set character, so you can't always gravitate towards the character that's your favourite. You guys can fight over who's your favourite man crush in the comments, and then you can all realise that the correct answer is clearly Nero. Like, seriously, we've got enough white-haired waifu material in this game to create our own DMC-themed K-pop band. Oh, and like in every other DMC title, throughout the mission you'll collect a resource called Red Orbs. These are then used to buy upgrades for each of the characters' kit, making them stronger and stronger as you progress. Each weapon has its own sort of skill tree, so if you really want to be that guy that never uses the gun and just maxes out the sword, then you can do that, and all the more power to you. Much like other DMC games too, the game rates your playstyle through a combat score system called style points. The more fluidly you combo abilities and minimize spamming the same ability over and over again, which the game actually does punish you for, means you'll gain a higher score. Which not only makes you look 10 times cooler, but gives you more red orbs at the end of the mission. Oh, and the music actually gets faster and faster the better your style score, so that's pretty fun too. Oh, and if any of you were worried about the initial E3 weird screamo music they played as Dante's main theme in his combat sequence, they fixed that, they toned it back and they changed it. But if you still don't like it, there's actually a jukebox in the main menu that you can change any of the characters' main battle music. It's really cool, and it also includes all the original music from the previous titles. Enemy variety is also something that helps keeping this game consistently fresh. There are a couple returning enemies from previous games, which is gorgeous to see reimagined in the new RE engine. With over 20 different variants of enemies and each having a different attack set, visuals and auditory patterns to match, the enemies are a lot of fun to play around. While there are a few that are just kind of trash and just there to cut through and slow you down, there is plenty of depth to explore how to perfectly counter and master the harder variations. There are even a few bosses that are returning from 3 in this game, which will either give you a nice surprise or a moment of, oh god, not this again, depending on how the boss treated you in the previous titles. But genuinely, the designs, both mechanically and aesthetically, have both been nailed. Most of the boss fights give a new challenge with a different mechanic each time that interestingly ties into the playstyle choice. Some of the weapons and playstyles give you a much easier time taking down the boss, but that's not to say that if you don't swap off or you don't figure that out that you're at a disadvantage. All the bosses are still completable on all the playstyles, it's just there to give you a little bit more to think about. I would say, however, that the bosses in this game are probably the easiest that I've encountered in all the DMC titles, with maybe the exception of one. But maybe that's just me. Quite frankly though, I never felt as though they were dragging or too easy. In fact, even if they're easier, some of these designs might be some of the more interesting throughout the whole series. Anyway, combat does exactly what you want it to, and I don't want to get too much into it as some of the weapons are tied to story, etc, and I don't want to spoil anything, but trust me, it's smooth, it's fast, it's fluid, and most importantly it's fun. There's plenty of variants for everyone with tons of replayability. Without spoiling anything, I want to talk a tiny bit about the story. I gotta give it Hideaki Itsuno and his whole team at Capcom for saving the narrative of DMC within this game, and I truly think they have. I, as many others, had lost hope with what happened within the reboot, and after the mishaps that led to 4 not being able to fully tell the story it wanted, it was just kind of left open. Well, I'm happy to say that DMC 5 not only does a great job of picking up and closing some of the previous plot lines, but it carries its own story really well. And hey, it's not the best story in the world, but DMC's story has never been known for being Murakami level writing. But it does do DMC well, which is what we could probably all agree is what the reboot failed to do. Most importantly, not only does it pick up well, but it also ends well, leaving a story in a good, conclusive place, but leaving enough open for potential sequels. There's even hinting at a potential game spin-off starring Lady and Trish as the main protagonists, which would be fucking awesome. It's tough to assess spoiler-free, but I'm a big DMC fan, and I gotta say that this story doesn't disappoint like the previous have. And while the story gets intense, in true DMC style, it never takes itself too seriously. To wrap up, the game plays really well, running at a smooth 60 frames per second with not a single issue or crash for me. The graphics and visual design within the RE engine is amazing and only topped by even better, fluid, consistently fun combat. The story, like always, is silly fun, but it does do well at bringing old and new plots to a close. So I'm gonna give DMC a 9 out of 10, like many other places have. It deserves it, and it's a really good game. And if you're not familiar with the DMC series, just go check out the earlier part of the video. I explained the story that you need to know to get into DMC 5. Just jump in and have some fun.
Consider it a gift. In honor of us finally meeting. Meeting.
Okay, 10 out of 10, game of the year. And remember guys, if there's anything you want to talk to us about, just feel free to join the Discord and come have a discussion.